Thanks. Hi, my name is Kate, and I'm a graduate student at UCSF in San Francisco, and I just want to thank CGS, and in particular Osagi and Emily Batikas for inviting me to be the reflector, and it's really a privilege to have been in the room for these discussions and to have the opportunity now to share with you some of what's transpired over the past few days. I've been asked to both report out on the work of the group over the past few days and reflect a little bit on our discussion of the past, present, and future of racial justice and genetic technologies. So where have we been, where are we now, and where are we going? And importantly, what are the next concrete steps for action? So many ongoing conversations, historical, intellectual, and political legacies shape the future possibilities for and the constraints on our strategies and plans for action. So I won't give a complete history and cannot in 6 minutes, but I do want to hopefully faithfully crystallize some of the themes and key directions and strategies we've discussed over the past few days. So I do want to highlight up front that telling and retelling these histories continues to be itself an integral piece of our steps towards justice. And in fact, the working group over the last 3 days put concerted attention to how such a project could take place. In fact, here it is crucial to highlight the continuities between contemporary uses of race and the deep links between families, reproduction, histories of racism in the US, as well as connections between genetics, genetic science, and continued patterns of racial exploitation, racism, and forms of structural violence. These past, presents, and futures are interconnected and intertwined. And, excuse me, I'm short. These past, presents, and futures are interconnected and intertwined, and it's clear not only in the ways that we remake race, but in the ways that we remake history and the possible future horizons through forging these very connections. Our remembering and forgetting are political actions. And so one key site of intervention identified is that of collective of memory and how to use teaching and curriculum development and media advocacy to reframe and provide counter-framings of these histories. Documenting and retelling the histories of eugenics and sterilization abuses could be one way to trace the continuities between historical and contemporary forms of racism and their connection to new and old genetic technologies. It remains crucial to recontextualize these legacies as lines of continuity with ongoing political struggles against oppression, rather than points to mark a demarcation or a clean break between bad scientific racism and clean, new objective research. And in this vein, I know that we're all looking forward to the efforts of CGS and Facing History and ourselves to work on the legacy of eugenics in the US, as this history could provide a lens for the intercrossing and intermingling between reproduction, racism, disability, and contemporary genetic technologies. And these efforts could be very synergistic to the future work of the Racial Justice and Genomics Working Group convened here. In light of these important continuities, however, it's also important to diagnose our contemporary times. Where are we now? As Paul Banus highlighted through his art last night, the completion of the Human Genome Project came along with many now iconic images and notions, including the notion that race itself could not be scientifically substantiated. However, declaring race over, in genetic terms, has not stopped us from using racial and ethnic categories to orient research questions, shape medical guidelines, and policing practices today. And I say with certainty that declaring race dead in the water did not and likely will not end racism. Just as declaring society colorblind or post-racial does not translate broadly into social justice. Instead, as we discussed in the track, the resurgence of biological race comes along with a set of broad societal and scientific and medical transformations. During our discussions, Dorothy Roberts keyed us into a set of tensions between access to genetic technologies and social justice goals. Access to potentially harmful technologies will not lead to social justice, and the expansion of gene databases in policing intensifies inequalities in already unjust systems of incarceration and border control. So further high-tech medical treatments also solidify individualistic notions of health and human well-being. These tensions touch on a larger issue. Familiar lexicons and concepts like equal access, diversity, and community engagement are often proving insufficient in these arenas. This is particularly true of a set of emergent policy solutions surrounding the use of race ethnicity in biomedical research, as Ruha Benjamin pointed out to us in the session. These have resulted broadly in race-based research, increased pressure to recruit marginalized communities to research, and recruit scientists of color to put recognizable and trusted faces on biomedical institutions. At the same time, these efforts intend to make biomedical research more inclusive and sensitive. Racism and structural inequality remain largely unspeakable and illegible, and efforts for democratic governance of research have so far been unrealized. So we are in a historical moment that calls us to question the central assumptions of these and other policy solutions. This upcoming generation of scholars is taking on this challenge and posing alternative strategies, concepts, and tactics for anti-racism and for upending oppression. These raise questions about who our best allies and coalition groups are, what the best tactics and strategies should be, and what sites of intervention and transformation need to be prioritized. These questions focused our discussion of where the work for the Tarrytown Project on Racial Justice and Genomics should go from here. Where are we going? Over the past few days, the track has developed a scaffolding for a proposal for an ongoing working group to sustain the conversation and push change forward. And I know, of course, this project has not taken shape just over the past few days, but really over many, many, many years, and now I think many generations of scholars. So in closing, I want to provide you a glimpse of how this proposal is taking shape. The working group would create and sustain a structure and give organization towards a more substantial set of goals around these issues. Such a working group would focus on questions of how best to work with concepts of human variation and racism across the domains of medical science and practice, population genetics, forensic uses of genetics, and industry. Such a strategy uses an interdisciplinary set of stakeholders brought together through sustained discussion and action within the arenas of media, biomedicine, and state practices. Based on our brainstorming this week, and of course ongoing, some of these goals include convening a long-term interdisciplinary working group around the uses of race in racial health disparities research, developing a set of best practices for research, possible curriculum development for use in medical schools, and media advocacy and engagement through boot camps, particularly around the history of sterilization abuses in California. So I just want to say thank you again, and if you want to hear more about any of the details or collaborate with the working group, please be in touch with our group leaders, Jonathan Kahn, Deborah Bolnick, Raina Rapp, and Dorothy Roberts. Thank you.